We all know Zhuge Liang, one of, if not the strongest commanders in the whole of Rise of Kingdoms, and today I'll be remaking my in-depth guide. So whether you have Zhuge Liang expertise or if you don't even have him, this video is going to be great so you can know Zhuge Liang's best skills, his best pairs, his best talents, and if you have the wrong talents, I mean it's an easy thing to fix that will improve your trades. And finally, if you should even consider investing in him if you don't have him right now. So if you're interested in Zhuge Liang as a commander overall and you just want a good guide on him, you need to stick around till the end of the video. Now let's start off by diving into Zhuge Liang's skills. I'm going to start off with his active skill, and it is just a very solid active skill with a circle AoE dealing 2000 damage to 5 targets. I say solid, but that's one of the best active skills in the game, only arguably weaker than that of Liu Chu, who has a 5 target 2250 damage. So this is easily one of, if not still, the best active skills. And on top of this, he has an amazing debuff where anyone that's hit by his active skill deals 15% less damage for 3 seconds. Keep in mind, this is 15% less all damage, so that is definitely a very powerful active skill to have, and this AoE is really what's going to bring your trades up with the Zhuge Liang. It's just how strong it is, and this debuff is a nice bonus to have, especially if you are doing a bigger fight. Maybe you're fighting someone else's murder ball and they've got 3 or 4 marches. Zhuge Liang's debuff is definitely going to help you in dealing that extra damage and making them deal less damage. His second skill here, he gains 30% health. This is definitely one of the strongest things in his kit as well, because not many archer commanders give health. Of the recent commanders that were released, you've got Zhuge Liang and you've also got a Shirbanipal who both give health. Everyone else doesn't give health, and a Shirbanipal is a random chance. So Zhuge Liang's health buff definitely much easier and definitely way more consistent, so it's easily one of the stronger things in his kit. He also deals 5% more all damage, just nice base stats right there for his archer units. On top of this, if his troop is on the map, whenever he is inflicted with a control effect, it has a 50% chance to negate the effect and deal direct damage 500 to the target, cooldown of 5 seconds. This isn't as overpowered as it used to be back in the day when we saw a lot more Guan Yus on the open field. Nowadays, we don't really see that, so I don't think Zhuge Liang's second skill in terms of that little extra removal of a silence or a control effect is as good. I mean, I'm pretty sure Gonzalo has a disarm, which is technically a control effect, but I still don't see this really getting much value on the open field. It's more just a niche thing for whenever you are fighting Guans, but it was definitely nicer when he did first release. His third skill here, this is a very simple skill. Whenever he's only got archer units, he deals 20% more skill damage, which is very solid. And on top of this, whenever his troop launches a basic attack, the archer units in that troop have a 10% chance to gain 50% attack for 3 seconds, cooldown 5 seconds. Keep in mind, only the first part of this skill is archer only. The second part, you don't need only archers, but only archers will get that attack boost. But overall, once again, very solid skill. Definitely very heavy in on dealing damage though, and there isn't too much tanky stuff in his kit, and you'll notice that's going to continue throughout. Now, as for his fourth skill here, this skill is probably one of his more interesting skills, and it's pretty simple. Whenever this commander's troop uses an active skill, if their troop does not already have the Marquee effect, it gains the Marquee effect. This increases all damage dealt by 10% for 10 seconds. This was probably the most confusing thing in his kit and still is, but the way it works is, whenever he uses his active skill, his main active skill, it doesn't count as the other commander's active skill, he will gain this Marquee effect. One thing we should note here is that these Marquee effects do not stack, and if you get the Marquee effect again, and as it says here, if you get the Marquee effect again and only have archer units, he's going to remove that effect off himself, and he'll deal direct damage to 3 enemies in a fan-shaped area, damage factor 1500, and it can't be boosted by skill damage buffs. The reason this skill is so important is the fact that this Marquee effect is probably the strongest thing in his kit, giving him that ability to literally deal almost a second active skill. And this active skill right here, even though it's not affected by skill damage bonuses, it doesn't say there is a skill damage reduction, and to my knowledge, and I said this when he first released, there is no skill damage reduction. So unlike a commander, such as Herman Prime for example, whose active skill, each target reduces damage by 15%, Zhuge Liang's 4th skill, there is no reduction, so all 3 targets will take that damage, which basically makes him, that AoE at least, almost at the power of the Nebu's active skill, because Nebu's 5 targets, but he's reducing that damage to each target. Zhuge Liang is not, so that's definitely one of the more powerful things in his kit, but you must consider that this marquee effect is difficult to get if you don't have him expertised, because once you expertise Zhuge Liang, you literally get the marquee effect whenever you enter fighting, and it's just going to give you 10% more damage for 15 seconds. So that means the second you get your active skill, you're going to get that double active skill as well. And on top of this, whenever you deal damage with his active skill here, or whenever you deal damage with his 4th skill, you gain a pretty nice 30 rage. But this expertise essentially allows Zhuge Liang to enter combat and then instantly throw off that 4th skill and deal that extra 1500 damage AoE to 3 targets. Without it though, this 4th skill is nowhere near as valuable, so the best recommended skill order in my opinion is just following how it goes in sequential order. So first max his active skill, then his 2nd skill, then his 3rd skill, and then max his final skill and go for the expertise. I think even a 5-5-5-1 Zhuge Liang is pretty good in this meta. He's not overpowered, don't get me wrong, he's not rubbish though, and that's why he's a fairly decent commander. I would also say that you don't really want to do a 5-5-1-5 build, which is what I would have said back in the day, just because you can't benefit from the marquee effect as much, since you won't be able to get a double active skill until you really do expertise him. That being said, I think Zhuge Liang is worth the expertise, and you should expertise him if you're going to run him on the open field, but he's usable at 5-5-5-1 nowadays, especially if you have him with some of his more decent pairings. Speaking of decent pairings, Zhuge Liang has a couple of pairings that are worth mentioning, and I'll start off with his strongest pairing, and that's just a Hermann Prime secondary. With Zhuge Liang, you've got a really good march. They're both dealing AoE. Hermann needs a fairly strong rage engine with the skill tree. Zhuge Liang is a fairly strong rage engine who has some stuff on his expertise, who also has the skill tree. And this just makes a really good march. Hermann's poison stacks do synergize very well with anyone that does AoE. Hermann boosts AoE. Hermann has march speed and defense, stuff that Zhuge Liang really needs. And so they're just easily the best archer pairing. I mean, they're easily, if not the best march in the game, one of the best marchers in the game. So Zhuge Liang with Hermann, easily his best pairing, and the one I recommend everyone does go for. If you don't have a Hermann, then I think a close second place would be a Boudica with a Zhuge Liang. This is another march I see a lot of people still running nowadays, and it's definitely still a very strong march. It's just not the most meta. But if you have Boudica with Zhuge Liang, I don't really think you need to go out of your way to get Hermann, because Boudica Zhuge Liang is still a very solid march, still going to trade good enough. You might as well save those gold heads until maybe the next generation of archers, or maybe a new infantry commander. Another pairing that I would like to mention is Shrabanipal. He is better than Nebu nowadays with Zhuge Liang, in my opinion, just because he's literally a Nebu but better. He's got Nebu's expertise, but on his active skill, he's got more stats, really. He's got a march speed that triggers while only off territory. That's the only downside. But then he has other stuff such as increasing more skill damage. He has things like taking less normal damage, which is great against the smite meta. And his expertise just gives you pretty much a ton of stats. So I think a Shrabanipal is a better version of the Nebu pairing as Zhuge Liang. So Nebu isn't a very good pairing with Zhuge Liang nowadays. And then another option would be Henry, but you have to run Zhuge Liang as the primary for that march, just because otherwise Henry is not going to get enough rage quick enough. One pairing I would like to talk about is YSG, and I've always spoken about YSG with Zhuge Liang. It's one of my most commonly asked questions. I don't really run this march just because it's too slow. You have to really micromanage it, and I'd rather, if you came out of Season 2 going into Season 3, get a YSG and put him with your Hermann Prime, rather than getting a YSG and putting him with Zhuge Liang, because you're going to end up maxing Hermann Prime and Zhuge Liang both if you've just exited Season 2, so you might as well put YSG with Hermann first, just because they work a little bit better and they synergize a little bit more than YSG with Zhuge Liang does, since this march is only good if you've got pure open field dominance, but otherwise Hermann YSG can work even if you don't have absolute dominance on the open field. The next thing I would like to talk about with Zhuge Liang is his talent trees, and there are really 2 talent trees you can run. This is the talent tree I personally run with my Hermann Prime, and this is the one I would run for pretty much all players, but maybe I'm a bit biased because I really do like Feral Nature just because of how quick it can help you gain rage, but this tree is what I recommend for pretty much all skill archer commanders. You go up to Venomous Sting because you're getting a nice skill damage boost. You go over to Razor Sharp for the extra rage. You pick up Rapid Fire, you pick up Arrows Nook to 2 out of 3, and then you go all in on Feral Nature, and then your extra points will go in some of the other talents. In this situation, I put them in Naked Rage, because Zhuge Liang is dealing ridiculous AoE. I think it's worth taking the extra skill damage, since you'll be dealing more overall, especially if you're running him with another AoE commander. So if you're running Zhuge Liang with a Shirbanipal, a Herman, or even a YSG, if you are doing that, I recommend Naked Rage. If you're running him with Henry or you're running him with Boudica, you could arguably not get the Naked Rage, just because they're both not dealing AoE and it may not be as valuable. But I think Naked Rage is worth it if you're running an AoE commander, especially if you're running 2 AoE commanders, and since Zhuge Liang has one of the highest AoEs in the game, it only makes sense to give him that Naked Rage talent. Plus, just the whole entire skill tree is always really decent, and whenever commanders do have them, I usually go in on that skill tree. The other option is going all in on the Archer tree, and it would look pretty much identical to this. And as you can see, I didn't end up going for Naked Rage at this point, because if you're running all Archer tree, you're probably running him with someone that's got some type of a single target damage, because you're not as interested in going for that active skill. That's why you don't have Feral Nature. This tree, I mean, it's slightly worse, I want to say, than the other tree. You could do something a little bit more like this, where you go all in on Archer tree, you go all the way over to Rejuvenate, max that out, and then you go down to Naked Rage and you max that out as well if you are running him with an AoE commander. That's certainly still possible, and it isn't a bad idea, but still personally, I'm a bigger fan of just going all in on skill tree. But you've got this tree right here as well that can work, where you've still got Naked Rage, you've still got Rejuvenate, you've got some of the more powerful things here like skill damage and skill damage reductions, and then you've also got the Whistling Arrows, which is still a very good talent. So kind of your choice between which tree you like. I'd say it's either this tree or it is going for the skill tree, which I do personally run, and this one has given me probably the most success and the best trades on the open field. Now, the final question I would like to answer today with Zhuge Liang is, should you invest in him? A question that is probably really easy to answer, and I mean, it's really just a guess. Even in the current meta nowadays, even though he is probably going on to close to a year old now, he's going to be a year old actually in a few days, he is still a very, very strong commander to be investing in, just because of how strong his 5-target AoE is, plus the extra AoE on his 4th skill when you put it with his expertise. And if YSG is anything to go off, a 5-target AoE of their strength is going to last at least 3 to 4, even 5 years, since I mean, I've had my YSG since 2021, and he's still going hard in 2024, so I wouldn't be surprised if Zhuge Liang lasts even longer, and might still be meta up until 2026, or even 2027, depending on how strong he is compared to some of the other commanders. So Zhuge Liang nowadays is still a really, really solid investment, and if you are considering getting him, even if you're late into Season of Conquest and you don't have him already, I definitely do recommend it, and I think he's only going to get better with more Archer commanders, because as you've seen when I was talking about his pairings, he's very versatile. I pretty much mentioned every single meta commander. They all work well with him. Henry, Boudica, Herman, Ashurbanipal, even YSG and Nebu. That's like 6 of the 6 good Archer commanders that work really, really well with Zhuge Liang. So I don't see why he would be a bad commander with pretty much any pairing, and he's probably going to be one of those commanders that is almost like a permanent keeper in your murder board. Very similar to that of YSG, very similar to a commander such as William as well, who have really lasted the test of time. So right now, I think Zhuge Liang is definitely a very good investment for pretty much all players. If you're just entering Season 3, if you are looking to invest in him since your late Season of Conquest, whatever it may be, I think he's got his uses. Yes, he may not be meta Garrison or anything anymore. I mean, he's an okay Garrison nowadays, but really, Zhuge Liang is an open field commander, and I think that he is going to continue to fulfill that role very well. And like I said, he's very good at 5-5-5-1, but I do recommend going for that expertise, and you won't regret it with him. His expertise, unlike commanders such as Boudica or Herman, or even Henry, whose expertise isn't as overpowered, Zhuge Liang's expertise is really, really good. It's similar to that of Liu Shi, who, when you run them, their expertise is just going to allow you to boost those trades by like 15-20% more, which is, in my opinion, worth around 320 gold heads. So I would go for that expertise It's just going to make your trades much nicer. And in those short bursty fights, you're going to get those really, really nice extra AoEs off that fourth skill right there, which is always a nice thing. It's pretty much like giving yourself a slightly weaker version of Jones' fourth skill, so you can't really go wrong with it. And Zhuge Liang is just overall a very good investment right now as of May 2024. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, I want to ask you guys for a very small favor, and that is consider pushing like on the video. I've been trying to remake all my old Archer guides that are over a year old now, just because I've definitely evolved in the way I record my videos, my thumbnails, and everything. So if you do want me to continue remaking these Archer guides, I am interested to whether or not you do actually like them. So push a like on the video if you do want these Archer guides, or even push a dislike if you don't. So just let me know by pushing the like or dislike button if you want me to continue making more of these Archer guides for all the older commanders, or if you want me to just focus on making the new commanders and leave the old guides as they are. I am interested in your opinions, and I will use it to pretty much guide the future of these Archer, basically in-depth guide videos. So now I just want to say I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.